Don't you know that I'm a superstar?
Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Celebrity Whisperer. I am your host of the Celebrity Whisperer. My name is Eric, and I basically on this channel I talk about how just an average man like myself has had the opportunity to meet many famous people just by circumstance and happenstance, being in the right place at the right time. It's a lot of interesting stories, and it's just about pure circumstance and how I've come to meet some really famous people, names that you will know, and that's what I talk about, and I share the stories with you. And I give you insights into these people that you may not have known about. So basically, that's the premise. And today's episode is about the time when I was in high school and I met Haywood Nelson. Haywood Nelson, if you don't know, many of you do know, starred in the What's Happening and What's Happening Now TV series as Dwayne, and one of my favorite shows growing up. And I'm sure, like a lot of teenagers my age, 60 to 45, can probably remember the What's Happening Now franchise very well. So basically, the story goes like this. I was in high school, and I was taking a bus in Manhattan from Midtown Manhattan that would take me into Harlem, where I was going to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, one of my favorite places in New York to be. I was a history buff even as a teenager. When I went on to college, I got my degree in history, my bachelor's degree. So, the Schomburg was one of my favorite places, still is. I would go up there and just look at the books and the materials they had and spend the whole day there. This was even as a 17-year-old. So I'm about 17 years old. I'm in high school, and I'm taking the bus uptown to Harlem from Midtown. And bus is fairly crowded. This is about 1982. And as the bus continued its journey uptown, more and more people, exited and so forth. And I was finally able to get a seat in the middle of the bus. And once the bus had passed 110th Street, there was only a few people left. And I was able to observe in the corner of the bus, sitting in the last seat, just an afro, because the person was looking down at a textbook, and they had their head down, and they had a big afro, so I wasn't able to see the face. But eventually, the young brother looked up from his book, and he looked over, and I was able to see it was Haywood Nelson, and I was completely shocked and surprised and delighted, really, and obviously curious. So I went over, got up from my middle seat in the bus and walked towards the back and sat next to him. And I let him know that I recognized him and was a big fan of the show. And, it was a good part of my childhood, Dwayne, Raj, and Rerun and the whole crew. And he appreciated that I had recognized him and I had enjoyed his work. And we had a brief conversation about that. This is after the show had been canceled, so that's why he was in New York. And that was, of course, was a natural question I asked him. I was like, what are you doing in New York City, riding a mass transit bus in the middle of Manhattan, going to Harlem? Why aren't you out in Hollywood and LA, looking for acting jobs? And his explanation was that he had, in fact, left acting and was returning to New York. He had returned to New York to live, where he was born and raised. I did not know that. I should have picked it up from his accent, but I didn't. He was born and raised in New York. He had returned after the show was canceled, and he had decided to leave acting. And he was now studying engineering at a New York college or university. I couldn't remember if it was New York Tech or City College or one of the schools in New York that teach engineering and technology. So He was training and studying to be an engineer. Wow, I had no idea. Being an engineer, you have to be very, very smart. You have to know math very well and so forth. So I was very, very impressed and surprised and pleasantly surprised by that. And I said, how far along was he? I believe he said he was in his second year. I can't remember exactly, but he said he was enjoying it and looked forward to becoming an engineer. And we had a nice conversation. We talked about New York and him growing up here. I had no idea he grew up here. I talked about, the cast members and what they were doing now and was he in touch with them and so on and so forth. And he was very pleasant and engaging. And when I finally reached my stop, I wished him all the best in his studies and his career. And he really did appreciate that. And, I got off the bus and that was a wonderful memories. What a surprise. You get on a bus and you meet, this one of the stars of one of your favorite childhood TV shows. That's the kind of thing that can happen, especially when you hang around Manhattan a lot. Hang around Manhattan a lot, you're going to meet a lot of famous people, or at least see them or spot them. And this was a wonderful memory from my teenage years of meeting Haywood Nelson. And what a wonderful guy and a great experience. And I was so delighted when What's Happening Now, came on, and he went back and got on that show. This was after I had met him. And that show ran for, a brief amount of time, but I was delighted to see that he went back there, and I'm sure he got some money, from doing that. That was very useful to him. So that was good. And this is a memory I always cherish. So, God bless Haywood Nelson. Good guy, good actor. And, I just wish him all the best in life. And that's my experience of how I met Haywood Nelson. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my video. And look out for the next few stories I'm going to be doing, because there's a lot of stories to cover that you're going to enjoy, because I've met so many famous people in my life. So like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and I will see you next time with my next encounter. And have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.